everyone, welcome back to another commentary. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Eric.
And today Eric and I are going to watch and talk about The Crow. Eric, when was the last time you saw The Crow?
I think I watched it last Halloween. Not like Halloween, but like in the lead up. I think I watched it sometime last October.
Cool. It's been a couple years for me, I think. This is a movie that I didn't grow up with, that I didn't watch.
We should have had CJ, because he did grow up with this, and he's
like a
story
big fan of The Crow?
He has a whole thing with like.
Oh, should I know that? I would have invited him.
Yeah, and I meant to tell you to do that, and I completely forgot.
Oh, okay.
But there's a whole thing where his dad, like he has like a very specific like memory of like this night my dad showed me The Crow, and like he's told it to me a couple of times. I'm like, should have had CJ here, because he has like a really personal connection to this. I don't exactly.
I'll definitely have to ask
It's
him
one
that.
of like the 100 movies that my uncle lent me whenever I visited my dad, and like that's how I saw The Crow.
Yeah, this is a
and
movie
I watched all four of them at once, like in a row.
Oh, crazy! And I've never watched the sequels.
2 is good. 2 is. I would recommend when you do the rewind, track down the novelization.
Okay.
Because that's a movie where the entire third act is completely reshot and ends up making that movie more or less a remake of this movie. But it had a very different ending, and that's in the novelization.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'll try to do that.
So, yeah, I would do that. They talk about, like if you watch the commentary and stuff, like they kind of talk about what the differences are, but...
My history with The Crow is almost precisely the same as my history with RoboCop, where I was peripherally aware of it growing up and maybe saw like little pieces of it on TV, and I had an idea of what it was, but I never really watched it. And then Superhero Rewind happens, and I start watching some of these things that I'd never seen before, and I watched The Crow, and I was like, oh wait, this movie's actually quite brilliant. And actually, I think I watched it like a year or two before I did the rewind, and I didn't really think much of it. Just like RoboCop. And then I did the rewind, and I started writing about it, and within the writing I went, oh wait, this is a 4. And I did exactly the same thing with RoboCop. And what's really interesting about those two movies, about comparing those two movies, is this is not the same kind of satire that RoboCop is.
No.
But they both have that thing where their villains are really one-dimensional, just straight-up evil people, and there's a reason for it, there's a point for it, and it's not just because we didn't know how to write characters. The idea that they don't have any humanity is the point, and a thing I wouldn't have come to until I wrote about it.
Well, and they also... they both did a very good job of casting them, so they're enjoyable to watch.
Right.
But yeah.
So anyway, if you want to watch The Crow with us, and we encourage you to do that, get out your DVD, your Blu-ray, however you want to watch it. It is currently on Netflix, which is how we're watching it, and get it past all of the menus to timestamp 0, and get ready to press play when I say now. Eric, I'm excited to watch this with you.
Yeah, me too.
Here we go. Everybody, please press play right now.
This is Michael Wincott's best role.
Who's that?
He plays the villain in this.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Often referred to as Gravelly Voice Guy. I was so excited in Ghost in the Shell when he showed up and he dies in the opening scene.
That's the whole reason that Eric hates Ghost in the Shell.
He deserves a Tarantino-esque comeback where like somebody uses him and like blows everyone's mind.
Eric doesn't dislike Ghost in the Shell for all the reasons it's bad. He just doesn't like that
I don't like that they wasted Michael Wincott.
That's it. That's the only thing he cares about.
So I had a thought.
Yeah.
The other day, which is going to be tangentially related to this movie. You know, Poe's The Raven?
Yeah.
So that's a horror story just about a guy who can't sleep because there's a bird outside the window, right?
That's right. That's exactly what it is.
I was like, wait, I've lived this.
That's why it's amazing. Because it's so creepy, and you're like, oh god, I'm so glad I'm not that guy. And then you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, you've had that, except you've not had a bird outside your window that was speaking English, okay? That, like...
No, but I assumed he was just, like,
a Raven quoting Nevermore. You've never had that.
I assumed he was just, like, exaggerating.
So I never had this thought before, but the opening of Watchmen is ripping this movie off a little bit.
Not as much as the opening of From Hell.
I've never seen that.
You don't need to. You have to own it, but you do not have to watch it. It is not a superhero movie.
I do own it. I've just never watched it. So this is a movie that would have made you think that Ernie Hudson was going to have a big career.
Except that he didn't do anything between this and Ghostbusters. Except roles like this where he's just kind of in the movie.
Well, he's the major supporting cop in, I mean, like...
Sure.
Like, I wouldn't say that he's just there. He's more present than Gordon in certain Batman things.
No, you're right.
I mean, he's got stuff to do in that.
But this isn't like an A-list movie. Like, it's still like I feel like he has done roles of this like level in other movies in between Ghostbusters and this, but they're just not popular movies.
I don't think he did anything where he had this substantial of a role.
Okay.
I mean, he's really only known for Ghostbusters and then this.
I mean, I'm not super familiar with Ernie Hudson's screen career. But
I think that's because he didn't do a lot more, Eric.
That might be.
I mean, usually when he's at conventions, he's signing stuff for Ghostbusters and The Crow. That doesn't mean he didn't do anything else. I'm just saying that, like, I don't think his other roles were much more substantial, but maybe there's something I haven't seen. I don't know.
So we have this thing in this movie with Devil's Night, which I don't think is a real holiday, or like what? I don't think it's a real holiday anybody ever took seriously. It's talked about in other movies as like Mischief Night. Like, Devil's Night is the day before Halloween, which is when you go and do all your pranks. Traditionally, in the real world, it's like you TP people's houses. Like, that's the day you do that.
Yeah.
In this, it's an excuse for gangs to, like, burn things down and, like have, like, these extravagant, like, insane... I don't know how you get there.
I see that as one of the many heightened things of this reality where that's probably only happening in this city.
Which is Detroit. I don't know if it is in the movie, but it is in the comic.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Another thing it has in common with RoboCop.
Well,
you could have put a statue of the Crow right next to the statue of RoboCop.
O'Barr lived in Detroit, and
interesting.
That's where his girlfriend got killed. And have you read the Crow comic?
Not in a very long time.
I haven't read it in a good long while either, but it's not a story.
Yeah. That's what I remember about it.
It is however many issues, like 6 or 8 or whatever it ends up being. It is just the Crow shows up and murders one of the people that killed his girlfriend, and there's not like an escalation. There's not like here we get Top Dollar and like he's the villain. There isn't a villain. He just murders everyone and then goes back to being dead and like talks to this little girl.
And that's it.
Here they had to actually build a narrative. It's also why I don't think this can be well remade. It's not a thing where I think it makes sense to go... That was a weird choice.
Yeah, it really was.
It's not a thing I think it actually makes sense
Did you think something was wrong with the disc frame in it?
I did. But it's not a thing that I think it makes sense to go back to the source material and be like, we're going to do it closer to the source material. This is as close as you can get and make it an actual coherent narrative.
Can I make a prediction if and when we finally get a remake of this movie? It will be...
It's been in production for about a decade.
It will be... Longer. It's been in production hell for a decade.
Yeah.
It will be 40 minutes into the movie before we get to this part.
You're probably right.
They'll open that. They'll do exactly what they did with the RoboCop remake. And I say
where
they.
You get to know them so you care.
Yeah, and then it'll be a really dull, drab character, and this is really efficient and economical, and you like this guy despite not knowing all that much about him, and it's exactly the same thing as... I'm just going to spend this whole time comparing this movie to RoboCop, but they have a lot of interesting comparisons. She has a key around her neck.
And there's things...
That makes her immediately more interesting than most little girls in anything.
It's because she's a latchkey kid. Which is not a thing that really exists that much anymore.
It just gives her, like, a distinct look. This is... I honestly did not know why she had a key around her neck.
Yeah, it's because her mom's never home, and so she has to be able to let herself in. So.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's a big thing in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Is kids they were called latchkey kids.
I'm
they
learning
were
things.
Basically raising themselves.
I'm an idiot. I've never heard this before. I'm glad I had Eric here, because if I was just
talking... It comes
talking...
from the influx of both parents having to work. And so the kids just came home and, like, you know, and the parents can't afford to pay for daycare or after school.
You think we'd have a lot more of that now, but I guess these days you could just have, like, a keypad lock or something. Like.
Well, and also, I don't know why it stopped as... I guess
if you think about it, a lot more families are two-income families now. And you got a lot more kids... I mean, we talk all the time about how kids these days seem to be raising themselves, right?
Yeah. But it's not. It seems to have gone ways to turn. Like you don't hear about latchkey kids.
Mm-mm.
Well, I guess there probably aren't as many because of what the way we are now versus the way we were then, which is better. In this regard, we don't have kids like walking themselves home from school, like 15 city blocks, and then like walking into their apartment in the slums by themselves, like. Their parents probably at least pick them up and take them home, like we're safer with kids now.
And when they get home, they stay there.
Yeah, they just sit inside and
more often.
Yeah, they don't run around
unless they're in a gang or something, which is unfortunate. But yeah, the dynamic between Ernie Hudson and this girl is great. It's a lot. It's a lot of what makes this movie work, apart from, of course, the Eric Draven stuff.
She doesn't work much after this because of this.
Oh, really?
The trauma of the death of
Brandon Lee.
Yeah.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
Because she could have had a career, too.
Yeah, she absolutely could have.
She could have been a big child actress. She could have had a good teen career.
I don't know if she's ever come back, but I know there was at least a period of time after this movie where she's not acting. I don't know if she tried to make a comeback or if she just went and ended up doing something else.
It goes without saying, this is probably the most comic book looking movie to date. Yeah, at the time it comes out contemporarily.
Yeah, even more so than '89.
I think so too, and more. I don't know. '89 is a real stylistic looking movie, but it's looking so much at Blade Runner and stuff. This feels like it's more influenced directly by comic books.
Mm-hmm. And music.
Well,
this is a very this is very influenced by clearly MTV music videos
and album covers.
And that kind of, I don't know what that genre is, but the Cure obviously is a big influence.
And all those things are talking to each other.
Is on the soundtrack, and it's great.
Like the stuff you're talking about was also influencing a lot of comics at the time. Probably influenced this comic book.
Yes, we know for a fact. It's The Cure, and there's 2 or 3 other big ones that were the depressing music of the 80s, and they were big inspirations. And it's also why he's a musician in this, because he's not a musician in the comic. Or if I remember correctly, there might be a page where he's playing a guitar, but it's not his career the way he is a musician.
What do you even call that style of music? It's not really metal. I always think of Eric Draven as a metal artist, but it's not really. It's more of it's an emo kind of thing. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah, it's pre-Nirvana, it's pre that grunge thing.
But it's not Metallica.
No, it's more bluesy.
But it's also less melodic than blues.
Yeah, but it's got that vibe to it. I love The Cure.
I just think it's hard to pin down The Cure. I don't even know what to call that. Music buffs will be. Jeffrey Patron can tell me what that's called.
Yeah. But I think of the when I think of The Cure, I think of Atmospheric, and I love The Cure. But I always think of their music as just their music feels a certain way. I wish I could remember the other bands, but I get into The Cure because of The Crow, in looking into The Crow and and I don't remember what the other bands are. The Crow's the Cure is the one that I get from this movie.
This movie, of course, has a really moody, melancholy soundtrack, but a lot there's electric guitar stuff, but there's also a lot of really traditional film score in this, if memory serves. It's been a while since I watched this, but interestingly, we don't really get Eric Draven's sound. It's not there's a band that makes a lot of music that is the score of the movie, and I think that's ultimately kind of smart. I think you could have done it that way.
We get one thing he's playing, which for the 6 months that I tried to learn guitar, I learned how to play that. It's 4 notes. It's just holding notes. It's just
because it's just all atmosphere.
Yeah, but yeah, I learned how to play that little ditty.
Interesting. So you also have a very personal connection to The Crow.
I do. I liked The Crow a lot when I was a teenager, surprising no one. It fits in with that Hellblazer and Anne Rice, Vampire Chronicles, and it just very much makes sense that teenage Eric loved this movie and watched it a bunch. I watched the remakes a bunch, or the sequels a bunch too. Not Wicked Prayer. I've seen that maybe 2 or 3 times, but all of the other ones I watched, or the other 3 I watched quite a bit.
I think of this set as kind of iconic.
Yeah, I do too. There's a very specific way that also Draven is. It's going to be interesting if they ever get that remake made, because there is so much from this movie that I think is iconic for what people know about The Crow that are invented for this movie. His name is not Eric Draven in the comic. It is just Eric.
And that's maybe a little on the nose, but it's so comic book. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. It also helps.
I think it's one of those things that's pretty easy to not even think about until you've watched it 2 or 3 times. You're like, oh, I get it. D. Raven, haha.
I think it works better in live action than it would on a comic book page, because on a comic book page you keep seeing D. Raven, where here it's just spoken. You're not thinking you're hearing Draven.
I like the way the flashbacks are handled here, because it's kind of surreal and it feels like it's really from his point of view looking back.
Mm-hmm. I believe
it's real horrific. Again, I would expect a remake to just show us all of this,
mm-hmm.
and then we'd probably flashback like this later, but it wouldn't be as impactful. Like, I like that we're only getting his past from the way he's looking at it, and it's somewhat unreliable narrator.
That all was not great.
It doesn't matter.
Die Hard.
What's great is it doesn't matter.
It's memory.
Yeah.
This is what I think of when I think of this room, is that shot there.
And it's awesome.
I think it's the blonde one. I could be wrong. It could be Fun Boy, which is the mentally handicapped one. But
so much visual storytelling in this movie. This is one of those movies where you can just turn off the dialogue and miss nothing. You'll know exactly what's happening.
I think it's this one, this blonde guy, but it could also be him, the mentally handicapped one. I'm not making fun of him. I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be, like in the way he. No, it's that guy. That guy,
yeah,
not
right,
that guy. The
right,
other one. I think it's the blonde one is supposed to be Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop was like supposed to be in this movie and doesn't get to be, and he's also Iggy Pop and the Stooges also influenced on the comics, and I think was one of the character models for Eric in the comics. Iggy Pop will play one of the villains in the gang in the second movie.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
He is also hilariously in a DS9 episode.
Oh, interesting.
And he's very funny.
Iggy Pop's great.
And all I'll tell you is he runs into walls, and it's great. Everybody loves the Iggy Pop episode.
I do this sometimes.
Yeah, and I forgot where you got it from. And
no, it's
like, oh yeah, that's
movie.
right. It's from The Crow.
Yeah. One thing I did at work, and CJ and CJ just started going into like a different bit from this movie. I also like that at this point we have not been introduced to the villain, because the way that we structure the plot is that it's supposed to be a reveal that it wasn't a random. It's not Batman. It's kind of like the reverse. We're like,
yeah,
or it's more like Gotham. We're like, it's not a random incident of violence. It is in fact a coordinated, like intentional attack.
Well, and
I like that we have no evidence of that yet.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I mean, it needs to be more of a Punisher kind of thing, because at its core, The Crow is a revenge thriller.
Mm-hmm.
And would you agree with me if I were to say, because I said earlier that this is one of those movies where you could turn off all the dialogue and you'd know exactly what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think most revenge thrillers should work that way unless they're really deep character pieces?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, okay, somebody hurt me, I'm going to go hurt them.
And most of them, I think, do.
When they're good.
Unless
they just get
bad.
really convoluted. You think so? Yeah.
Yeah, because they're so simple and like...
Yeah, and there's a formula for that. And this follows that formula.
Because even John Wick, you could do that with.
Absolutely.
And like John Wick obviously is excellent. You can... John Wick is absolutely a movie you can play in the background while you're working on something.
Yeah, 2 and 3 not as much just because they're so mythology heavy. But then it's
But it also works that it's a movie you can just look up every like couple of minutes and just see something awesome.
Well, that's true. Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't know if you could follow those movies as much as you could the first one.
But this is a movie that I think would be cool to write some kind of, like, I don't know, concept album to or something, or have, like, an orchestra that plays, like a different score for this, because, again, so much of the score is just atmosphere.
Mm.
Oh, but this is kind of a rock song here. I forgot about this.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And, you know, I said traditional score. So far, I've really only heard synth.
Mm-hmm. That's traditional score for the 90s.
Well, that's true. Well, and I wanted to ask you about the datedness of this movie. And I'm not complaining when I say that, of course. This is a movie that's very much about the time and place that it's in. But even more than RoboCop, I cringed the notion of remaking this. I mean, then I saw the RoboCop remake, and I cringed when I watched it. But even more at this, just the idea of it, I kind of cringe, because I think you would need a full-on update and make it atmospherically about other stuff.
So, to, like, update it, I think you would... you want to keep... Because the comic's very simple and you can do anything you want with it.
Yeah.
It's just about random violence, and that obviously still applies, still happens. You can do it anywhere and anywhen. If you want to keep about similar things like this movie, you set it in the slums, right? And you make a Black Crow, and you deal with that stuff. Like, that's the obvious immediate thing to go to for social commentary.
Yeah, probably so.
In 2019, 2020, like that's what you do.
Do you make it more influenced by more modern music? Do you do a rap Crow?
Maybe.
I mean, I think that could work.
I guarantee you that the Wu-Tang loves this. Like, the RZA will do the score for that movie in a heartbeat. I guarantee you.
That could work. Don't give it to Eminem.
No. This guy here haunts my memories. Every movie he's in, I think he's Danny DeVito in my memories, and I go back, I'm like, it's not Danny DeVito, it's this guy. I also thought it was really classy for Danny DeVito to do an homage to the Penguin in Blank Man. It's not Danny DeVito, it's this guy.
So every time you see this guy...
And I can't be the only one, because in Always Sunny, he plays Danny DeVito's brother.
Oh, interesting.
So I can't be the only one that thinks these two people look very similar. He's like a tall Danny DeVito.
Yeah, because
But even then, he seems like a short man.
Well, I was about to say I would say Pesci first, but maybe not. And this just looks like the opening to Birds of Prey.
It does. Birds of Prey is obviously influenced by this show.
Yeah. Well, how do you not do that when you're in a dark, broody city and you're operating out of a clock tower?
Yeah. But
these sets are amazing. Like, you have to really up your game with dark and broody comic movies after this, and this is only a couple years after Batman '89. Like, some of this makes the Daredevil movie look kind of lame, and that's a decade after this.
Can I tell you
like,
how
look
else
at these rooftop
you
jumping
could update
it looks so good
to the modern day for like social commentary and like just type like hitting that social nerve that I don't think a mainstream movie would do, but you could do if you're an independent movie. You make him the victim of a mass shooter.
Oh, interesting.
Right? Like that's
sure.
Like that's as random acts of violence as you can get right now.
I think you immediately end up with a more serious movie.
Yeah, I do too.
Because you're dealing with a hot button issue in a way that you weren't in the same way with this. I mean, like urban upheaval and
gang
violence, absolutely. And we were talking about that a lot in the media and in movies at this point. But I would call that a problem people didn't know how to fix before it was as controversial as
the mass
shooter movie would be. And also, I don't think you can make those villains fun. I mean, like, immediately that... Really?
Yeah.
In a mass shooter movie? I think you'd have a lot of people that would say that you were making light of it.
That's... Okay. Whether you should or not is a different question. I think you can.
I'm just saying I don't think you can and really get away with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's real...
It would look like you were making a real messagey movie. Like, this doesn't feel messagey because it's so much just about this guy who something bad happened to him. Like, I think it's easy to not think about the social commentary in this movie while you're watching it. And, I think the same was true of RoboCop.
It's about saturation,
because I can't go 5 minutes without bringing up RoboCop.
Where, like... I think when you look at the early things that are dealing with the early films and comics and novels that are dealing with these kinds of issues, they take them more seriously, but that starts in the 70s. We're into the 90s. Like...
That's a good point.
Like, we're just doing that now?
Well, did you see the Dutch angle?
I did. Are
you watching this movie that we're watching, Eric?
I have a thing about this guy. But I'll get to that in a second.
Okay, sure.
I think you can do this with mass shooters when we were about a decade into movies using mass shooters as just scapegoat villains, which we're not there yet.
Will we ever be?
Yes.
Do you think so?
Absolutely. We will become desensitized to it through media like we do everything else.
But it's been a
Because we still haven't solved the gang problem. Like, this is still going on, and...
No, that's absolutely true, but every time you have, and I don't mean to get political with this, but every time you have a mass shooting, we just all drop everything and have the gun debate again. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen as much with gang violence, because it's not as big.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also...
And so I don't know if that becomes the scapegoat. I don't think that ever becomes the Russians.
No, because... I guess you're right, because... We all know from evidence Again, not trying to get political, but we all have evidence from other countries. When you ban guns, gangs still have guns. Like, criminals still are able to get access to guns. So it's not a question, whereas with the mass shootings, it's a normal person. So that's... or just an average person being able to have access to firearms. So maybe you're right.
So this is one of those movies that is incredibly influential, but was not like a huge movie.
No, it's a cult. It's a consummate cult film.
And if it had been bigger, I think we would have made strides, particularly in making really stylized, heightened, genre stuff, satire stuff, but also especially comic book movies. I don't think you can have Blade without this, but we credit Blade a lot more for the onslaught of superhero movies in the 2000s. And
I also don't think you can have The Matrix without this.
You absolutely can't. And from almost frame one, I was suddenly making Matrix references in my brain that I never thought about before. But I only wanted to talk about RoboCop, so I didn't bring them up. Mm-hmm. I actually did not remember there being as much music in this movie.
Well, so
I take back what I said earlier.
Yeah, I
just don't remember it that way. So forget everything I said earlier about that.
There's a lot of songs on the it's a soundtrack movie.
It's kind of a credit to the movie that it doesn't have that though, or that I didn't have that, because it doesn't stop everything for the music. Mm-hmm. And it really is part of the movie that is moving the narrative and the ideas and stuff forward. And there's Tony Todd, and I forgot until about 10 minutes ago that Tony Todd was in this, and then for a second I was like, wait, Tony Todd's in this, right? I don't want to say it because I don't want to sound like an idiot if I'm thinking of some other movie. But yes, Tony Todd's in this.
But not as the villain, which is interesting.
Yeah, I feel like he plays side stuff in a lot of things, though. Maybe not villains, though.
If you told me that Tony Todd was in this movie, I would assume he was the bad guy.
Well, yes, of course. Especially at this point in his career.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is post-Candyman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I think Candyman's 91, 92.
And this is what, 93?
Okay, so there's this weird thing with these two. So that's Michael Wincott. I forget what the actress's name is, but she's great in this.
He also could have played Tommy Wiseau.
But not his voice.
No, that's true.
He has one of the most distinct...
I'm just looking at him with long hair, and I'm like, no, you do a couple prosthetics things, and obviously he's a more attractive man than Tommy Wiseau is, but he could have played Tommy Wiseau.
So...
in the face.
There's a weird incest angle that we're playing with them. They are brother and sister.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And they're lovers. And they have an explanation, because obviously she's Asian and he's a white guy. They have an explanation, they lampshade that by saying, I think it's the same dad, but different moms, I think.
Okay.
It could be same mom, different dads.
That doesn't make it not incest, though.
No, my issue is, I get that, okay, so one of them had an Asian parent, one of them didn't have an Asian parent, fine. They don't look anything alike.
Huh.
Even in that situation, siblings still would look similar.
Not always. Not always.
You don't think
no,
so?
Sometimes you'll have enough genetics from one parent that takes over. You'll have siblings in a family that came from both of the same parents who don't look anything like each other. That happens.
I guess you're right.
So it's a lot.
I guess you're
right. It's a lot more likely to happen if you both had a white mom, but one of you had like an Asian dad or a black dad or whatever we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. So there's also a thing that we do here, that we do a lot, which is this. I guess with the gang violence has become a thing that we can kind of play less, we don't treat it seriously. There is a weird, I think it starts in the 80s, but it might start with the sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing of the 70s, but there is a weird romanticization of the death by drug thing, the overdose, that we're going to play with here. And we do it in a lot of movies where so he's going to save the mom from overdosing by pulling the drugs out of her. But we tend to do this thing where we frame it as a beautiful tragedy. We do it in a lot of movies with drugs. And I think it's an interesting thing that we do where It's a like I don't know. There's like a heightened thing to that we do, and also the Sex Pistols movie, Sid and Nancy, got a lot of crap for that in their ending.
Interesting. Yeah, I wonder how much of that you can call romanticizing it. That just doesn't sound like the way to say that word. I wonder how much of it you can call that, and how much of it is, if you're writing it from the perspective of the person who is going through the drug trip, that's what it's like.
But this movie's not.
And that
this movie's from the perspective of him.
Well, that's true.
At least in that scene.
So I love how scary Eric Draven is in this movie.
That's also a thing that we will not be able to do in a sequel.
What's that?
Like this, like we're gonna go for real menace. Like he's gonna be big and broody, right? Like a remake Crow will not be.
He won't be having fun with it.
Yeah, or he's
not going to have as much personality.
He'll just be doing Heath Ledger's The Joker, which is definitely
an influence on Heath Ledger. This movie had to have been. I've always said that.
Or he's got all those knives in him.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Before the actor leaves, I do want to say there's an actor in Chasing Amy who I always think is that guy. They look identical, I'm convinced, but it's not the same actor. Anyways,
Eric's having a lot of problems identifying actors in this movie when he's younger. He's like, all these people look like other people that I know.
I guess so.
That's Eric's commentary. Actors
that
look
guy's
like other
also
actors.
in stuff, but I can't place him immediately. I feel like he played this role in a lot of movies.
And of course, there has to be a little bit of '89 influence in this movie. I doubt this movie happens if it's not for Batman. Mm-hmm. We were kind of creating an atmosphere that was ready for these sorts of things with Batman. Even if you don't like that movie, you have to credit it for that to some degree, I think. And it would have been nice if a sequel to Batman '89 had been a little bit more sober than Returns was, and looked and acted a little bit more like this movie. Like,
yeah,
the exact world we're looking at is a world that Batman couldn't have it. And would be a really nice take on Batman, and it's still not exactly what we've done with it. You could still do it, like, it would feel more like real traditional, like late '80s, early '90s Batman comics if you basically used the Crow as a blueprint for a more comic book accurate Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the way it's edited, but just the way it looks.
I forget if they talk about Batman as a link in the chain, because obviously the comics come out beforehand, and I think get licensed before '89.
Oh, interesting.
But like when James O'Barr talks about the development of this process, he talks about like how awful Hollywood is and like all of the different ways this movie could have gone, and one of them he cites, and I don't know if this is true, but he says it is. It seems too extreme even for Hollywood, but maybe not. They wanted it to be a musical starring Prince.
What?
Yeah.
Well, he was really hot right then, and they wanted him in a lot of stuff. Oh no, this is '94. This comes out the same year as The Mask, which is fascinating because I was actually going to bring up The Mask earlier as, and I guess this is my touchstone very often for this phenomenon, but the idea of a thing that, because you didn't adapt it straight and you made certain changes and you took risks with it, you actually ended up with a better project than you probably would have had if you just straight up adapted it exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The Mask is obviously a more dramatic example of that, because it was essentially watering down sort of a thing that was like super violent and was in a totally different genre, but in so doing they got a better story out of it because that initial material is not very good. This is kind of taking what it was and running with it, but then putting, like you said, a real narrative on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot there were as many F-bombs in this movie as there are.
Oh yeah, no, it's a full-blown R-rated movie.
But of course, we're less desensitized to that and violence in 1994, so that all feels edgier back then. I think it's important to note that it's really difficult, I should say, at least for me, to put myself entirely back in the time and place with this movie. I can't really imagine seeing this when it came out and how it would have affected me.
See,
what the impact would have been.
I disagree that it's edgier then. I actually think it'd be more edgy now because we don't make movies for adults anymore. We don't make fun movies for adults anymore outside of John Wick movies.
Okay.
Like the 80s is nothing but lots of swearing and nudity and violence for adults. Like, this is post-RoboCop. This is post, like, all of the, like, Van Damme and Steven Seagal, like, R-rated movies, and, like, some of Stallone and Schwarzenegger's R-rated movies, like...
That's fair.
Like, this is in step with what we're making.
Yeah, but are we doing as much of this in, like, really super heightened stylized stuff? I mean, you have examples. You have Demolition Man and stuff like that. But... You're right, like, I get your argument about not making movies for adults, but we do make TV shows for adults, and we almost only make TV shows for adults.
Well, sure,
now.
but those are also, like literature.
Are they
TV shows?
sanitized?
They're not, like, fun.
No,
like
that's true.
Well, that's fun entertainment that is also for adults, I guess is really my... Because, like, Daredevil's wonderful. Daredevil is not like this.
Okay, but when I say, because like I said that right after I made a statement about the violence and the edginess, but I'm also talking about the stylized nature of it and how comic book it is. Like I've seen Blade since then. I've seen Sin City since then. I wonder how much this might have blown my mind in 1994.
Probably. I mean, yeah. I mean, it did for me.
I'm not just talking about the violence when I say
whenever
that.
I see this. Like, this is a big movie for me. It's a big movie for every dark teenager.
Sure, yeah.
If you find it.
And then I wanted to ask the almost reverse question.
I did not ever do The Crow for Halloween. I did not fall into that trap. We all make fun of that kid.
I was going to ask you if you ever did that, or
I
if
did
you
not
never
do
want
The
to,
Crow for Halloween
because you did John Constantine.
I did,
and I feel like this is a thing you could get away with.
Yeah,
I think you could do it now,
especially now with my long hair.
You've got long hair.
Yeah. But no,
I meant to mention that the long hair looks good on you. You haven't done that in a long time.
No, I have not done that in a long time.
But anyway, so I want to ask you almost the reverse question of how did this really impact people back then versus watching it now? What do you think a 15, 16-year-old today would take from this movie?
I don't know.
I can't imagine.
I think
because they missed all of the 90s counterculture.
Mm-hmm.
They missed all the anti-establishment stuff. They missed all the rock and roll rebellion.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's interesting because it's the 90s, but it's also timeless, and so I think in some ways it's not as dated. But I also think there is this real.
Do you think it's almost more dated if you know things?
Yeah, probably. I mean, like going back to it, the most dated element about this movie is probably that there's not cell phones. But that's the most dated element of every movie before 2005.
Right, and I think even a lot of 15, 16-year-olds would dismiss that as, okay, it's being a pseudo-period piece.
Although I also think it's better to not have cell phones than to have flip phones. Flip phones dates you harder than not having cell phones.
No, that's exactly right. The Matrix has not aged as well as I thought it would.
Nope.
It really hasn't.
Not with those phones.
In fact, I would say
those phones were so cool. What happened? They're like bricks in their hand.
Yeah, we used to talk about how cool Star Trek was for predicting it, and then we had it for like 9 years, and then we don't have it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, but I think there is a very distinct, and this is why I am at odds with the current like 80s nostalgia boom.
Yeah.
Because my 80s is a different 80s. I've always said that, where I'm like, you guys are like the weird, like, the upper level, like, neon Spielberg 80s. But there's a different 80s that's the 80s that I like.
The grunge 80s.
Yeah, the grunge 80s. But it also goes in the... There was a very distinct thing that I think of for early 90s, late 80s. That I'm not sure is actually better captured than the original Ninja Turtles comics.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, those feel a very distinct way that this movie also feels. This would probably be a really good double feature with the original Ninja Turtles.
I wanted to mention that too. I was having flashbacks to that. They
have a very similar feel.
Yeah,
and they're both kind of
they're coming
more
from
independent films.
In certain ways, they're coming from the same place.
Mm-hmm. And they're both adapting narratives that you can't just. It's not Watchmen. It's not a straight story. You have to pull elements from this entire thing.
Yeah, I mean,
and make a new narrative
Turtles had
around
individual
these moments.
issues that had a beginning, middle, and end as far as their stories go. But you can't take the run and make a movie. You have to.
They also did have an ending
story.
when they started making that movie because only issue 11 had come out.
Right. Good call.
But yeah, no, there's a real distinct. And I don't know if it's more 80s or 90s because it shows up in both. But there's like a rundown something in the late 80s, early 90s that shows up in a lot of comics and movies, and like that's what I think of.
I'm going to make a weird statement now that you've said that because I've never thought about this before. But there's this underground other culture that you're talking about that didn't change much between the 80s and 90s until you got to, I would argue, maybe the more sterilized like Hollywood nature of the mid-90s, circa 95 or 96. What you're talking about is almost like an unbroken decade between the 80s and 90s for that underground
It's like 85
world.
to 95.
Yeah, where that's a decade.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why you can't peg it as 80s or 90s, because that whole thing was its own thing. And it doesn't squarely begin in 90.
And that's what becomes grunge. Like, because grunge is a 90s thing, but like, that is what builds to and then becomes Nirvana. And then Nirvana keeps that going.
And obviously some of that is still hanging around by the late 90s, but we're beginning to sort of lose it, or it's evolving into the, like, hard rock era of the early 2000s. But, like, when you look at, and then, of course, like everything, it gets real commercialized, but when you look at this movie, this is 3 years before Buffy, and there's a lot of this in Buffy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Particularly with the Bronze.
Mm-hmm.
And Spike. Spike you just throw in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And with the really dark but sadistic stuff, Buffy has
That's a great job.
fun with it in a similar way this does.
Well, and it's
yes, I'd like to second that was an amazing shot.
And Spike's like because Spike's like that 70s punk. And like a lot of this is like is maybe like post punk. I'm sure post punk is actually a thing, but like it's what happened to that music.
Good call. Yeah.
Like the punk rock of the 70s became whatever the Cure is in the 80s, and then which then becomes Nirvana.
But yeah, this is following that revenge thriller formula of your main character is basically also the slasher in a slasher film, but you're supposed to relate to him to some degree even if you don't condone what he's doing, and it's supposed to be like a cathartic thing where it's like, I wish I could go just murder all the people that have wronged me, right? And so instead of enjoying the kills the way you would in a slasher movie where it's like, that idiot, he's dead now, this is I'm glad that this protagonist that I find endearing in some way is like making them get theirs. And that's why I kind of enjoy how creepy and scary he is, because he is essentially the slasher character.
In the same way that like Charles Bronson in Death Wish and obviously the Punisher.
And the Punisher, yeah.
But
who, as Vince would point out if he was here, exists partly because of Death Wish.
Well, yeah, and even more so because of the Executioner. But this effect does not age well.
It's not terrible, but yeah. Then it just like it's the wrong color, and then suddenly it just color corrects.
I do think that this movie has the problem of all edgy teenagers movies, which is well, an edgy teenager music, where like as time went on, it's not as edgy as it was. Like
yes,
like Marilyn Manson has an album called "Smells Like Children," which I'm sure was horrifying in 1991. In 2019, I go, you're trying very hard to like scare
creep
moms.
me out, and
yeah. This doesn't have it as much like in the performance of it, but like there's a lot of stuff in this movie that like just the quotes, you're like, yes, that came out of a 14-year-old's like diary.
That's a
trying
really
to write
point.
poetry.
I think that's just time moving forward, which
Well-
makes me wonder if we're not already like way too desensitized to certain things. We're like, as you get used to things that you used to see as really offensive or controversial, you keep trying to trump them.
Mm-hmm.
But I would also say there's still plenty of really dark stuff in this. Like,
No, absolutely. But it's also
Like, that's pretty dark.
I'm specifically thinking of the things that he says, which I think is very high school, like high school notebook poetry. But it works. It works better than I've seen in a lot of other things, or it holds up better than I've seen in a lot of other things.
And again,
but he
because-
just has such deadly intensity, and then he also has like this manic fun. It just works. But I think on paper, a lot of that, like if you looked at the script for this movie, you'd be like, that's not a movie that's going to hold up.
Well,
This is what I'm talking about.
And it helps because it
The like crying arm.
It helps because he's a wraith. Mm-hmm. It helps that he's not just a person who like lost his mind and suddenly decided to do all this. Like, he's a ghost, and he gets to get away with that balance. Partly because he's a ghost, but this movie would be no fun at all, and I would feel like I was being even preached at a little bit if it was just mean, broody, angry guy killing people. Like, I think the fun he's having is really important, partly to give us some levity so that we know that we're allowed to enjoy this. But,
Well, and it also differentiates it from this typical revenge thriller that kind of is codified by the Death Wish films.
yeah, sure.
Which are fun in a different way. Like, Death Wish is fun because as those movies goes on, he just gets more and more guns, and those action scenes get more and more ridiculous.
And I also don't mean to say
the
that
character is never having fun.
Yeah, and I also don't mean to say that revenge thrillers necessarily have to be fun. There are reasons. It can be worthwhile to make a movie like this is a different thing, but like something like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer or something that's about getting into the mind of somebody that's doing horrible things, and it's not supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to tell you something about what those people are like and make you think about it in a sobering, serious kind of way.
Well, and it's that thin line between like art and entertainment. Not that they cannot be, that they're mutually exclusive, but like when you're trying to make something, when you're trying to make somebody enjoy it and somebody have an experience, like those are different things.
And this is so heightened and stylized and atmospheric that from the beginning it's kind of saying like it's not Apocalypse Now. Like it like just the artistry of it wants
We
you
are
to
dealing with
enjoy
serious
yourself.
issues, but we're dying everything up to 11, and like it's real heightened world, and like you, Sin City does this, which also comes out the night,
Absolutely, yeah.
which deals with like really like serious things, and then like goes real big with it,
and kind of in exaggerating it, it makes it easier to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a lot of why we do that.
I've always thought that was the strength of comics as an underground medium, which has been lost now. Is comics were able to talk about things that other people weren't able to talk about because nobody's paying attention to comics. Everyone's paying attention to comics now. You can't say
now that's where we're getting all the
controversial
material
things.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we're more worried about what they're saying, and so they're getting censored in even in ways they weren't under the Comics Code Authority. I don't mean that wasn't a bad thing, and that I'm glad we got away from it. It's just different, is all I'm saying.
But a lot of like indie comics were able to get away with things that like even indie films weren't getting away with because nobody was paying attention to comic books.
So Eric Draven is surprisingly toyetic. Like, there are...
And there's a lot of Crow action figures.
I was going to say, like, he makes a really good action figure. And I don't mean to say that I would want, like, a whole line. Like, I don't really want anybody else from this movie. Like, maybe Tony Todd. He's got, like, kind of a distinct look, and he could be an action figure. But not a lot of the other characters in this. But the Crow himself, he's an action figure.
But would not have made a good action figure in 1994.
Well, not for children.
No, I just mean we weren't making, like, adult action figures yet. Like, in 1994, like...
No, you wouldn't want Kenner to make this action figure.
Yeah, you don't want that.
You wouldn't want the Crow...
You want to wait till, like, 98, 99 when, like, Todd McFarlane comes in and we start making the...
Yeah, you wouldn't want, like the Crow with body-stabbing action. Which is what you'd get. You know? Or he'd have a crow on his shoulder and you press a button and the crow would, like, flap its wings. Like, that's what the Kenner Crow figure would be. No, you're right. You wouldn't want that.
And there are some gorgeous Crow statues and figures.
Oh, yeah.
That I've seen.
Yeah, Hot Toys has an amazing one. Oh, look, Crow mind melds.
Okay, so this is something that I think is fantastic structurally and narratively, like on a script level. We establish here that he can share memories, and we use as a plot device so that he can convince him that he's who he says he is and that he's what he says he is, but is also the device he will later use to beat the villain. So it's not just a plot device, it is actually integral to the film because it is how he beats the villain, because he gives him all of the hurt and pain and the memories of his wife dying. He puts all of that into the villain's head, and that's what makes him fall off the building at the end.
I forgot about that. So you think that in this scene that it's just the movie being efficient, which is already nice. Even if this was just a plot device, I would give it that.
Yeah, he's got mystic powers, and this is an easy way to do that.
Yeah, and we don't have to spend pages and pages explaining things, and we don't have to
contrive a way that he'll believe him.
We don't have to do the first 3 episodes of Iron Fist, where it's like, I don't believe that you're what you say you are. We just get through that real quick. Like, if that happened to you, you'd be like, okay, like, there's no way for you to fake that. Like I buy it. But for it to be then set up and pay off, it's nice because you didn't expect it. You wouldn't think this is setting up
power comes back.
Anything, and it also lets the audience know at the end that the movie's been playing fair with them and that he has a specific power set. We know what the rules are. No, you're right. That's excellent. I had forgotten that that's how he beat the villain. That's a big cigarette.
It's probably 100, which is what I smoke when I smoke.
Okay, but I don't remember your cigarettes even being that big. That looked like a very big cigarette. That looked like a movie screen cigarette, where it's like, we're afraid that a regular size cigarette you're not going to see very well on screen. So we made one.
There's one of those in Constantine. It's bigger. It's a giant cigarette. It's the one at the beginning on the dresser. They talk about in the commentary that is a extremely oversized cigarette.
So they could get that shot
right.
Yeah, because they wanted it like hanging off partly, and then they soft focus the background.
Yeah,
it's a really cool shot.
Yeah.
It's very memorable.
It had to be oversized to look right.
Look, Eric, trash.
Yeah.
Did you ever notice that sign? I never noticed that sign before.
I don't.
It said trash.
It doesn't stick out to me. Like, I'm sure maybe I noticed it before. I also don't know what
I think they should be worried about the spotlight coming through the window. Like, is somebody looking for them? Anyway, sorry, what?
I want to know what he does.
What's
like, as a job? Like, I guess he runs crime, but I'm not exactly sure. Like, I guess he runs the gangs. That's how he has money. This is also a thing we do in movies, which is you can be a criminal. Like, people that run things in crime, like, not just somebody that's in a gang, but, like, somebody who runs the organization that runs the gangs. They have, what do you call those? Like you're not just in the mob. Like,
that's
the mob
absurd.
has...
I just want to mention how absurd that is, and I love it.
What, the thing of knives and swords?
Yeah, just the big...
And this is
the big case of
this is right
knives.
after he did Three Musketeers, where he also uses a
yeah.
But
I mean, it's just got a vault of knives.
But in, like, real life, you have to have, like, fronts and, like, legitimate, like, business things, like the Kingpin. Like, the Kingpin doesn't just run crime.
Yeah.
The Kingpin also has above-board legitimate things to hide that crime. Oftentimes in movies like this, their job is, I run crime. And that's not a thing.
Well, I mean...
not anymore. Like, Al Capone, like, those days.
Exactly, where there wasn't really a front.
But that's because they couldn't, like, get you, like...
Yeah. You were just
paper trails, like didn't exactly exist then. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
There's not cameras everywhere.
Yeah, and when you don't have a front, you're just, like, hidden and nobody can find you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you're running...
He's not hiding.
No.
He is just a crime lord.
But that's part of what makes it so heightened, and it makes it feel like you're in a city that's so corrupt. I mean, we do this sometimes with Batman, too.
A lot of Punisher films like that, too.
But, like, this is how messed up the city is in this world. And, again, it's dialing everything up to 11.
I've always liked that bad.
We haven't talked about Proyas at all.
No.
And we should. So, obviously I love this movie. I also love Dark City. I think I like Dark City even more than this movie. And it's a crying shame that he didn't make more movies like this.
But both of those movies are consummate cult films. They did not...
They weren't huge.
I think his mistake is... It seems like he wants to make studio movies. And like after those two, I feel like he goes to a smaller production company and goes, I made these two movies everyone loves but didn't make any money. Give me $20,000 and I'll make a movie.
He should be making a movie every 2 years for Blumhouse. That's what he should be doing.
This is the thing that I learned how to do. Which is not difficult.
So are you with me? Is it smart that we don't have like a token, like the song that Eric Draven wrote?
We do.
Oh, we do?
Yeah. They play a record, but you only hear it. We're about to do it here.
But they don't make like a big deal out of it.
I mean, she's about to listen to it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because
I don't remember this part. I'm sorry.
He says to her, it can't rain all the time.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about it. It can't rain all the time. Okay.
That says it can't rain all the time. And it's going to, like, skip on, like, one beat so you don't hear a bunch of the song. But we do have, like, this song here where she listens to... the record's no longer dated.
No, that's true.
We've circled back around on that one.
Yep, we're doing that again. And that's been true for a decade or more. Like...
When I first saw this movie, the records were definitely, like, an older thing.
Yeah.
They had not come
You
back.
would have friends that don't even know what records are. Okay,
yeah.
but see...
Yeah, it's stuck on, like, this loop, but I don't know if that's the song or if it's, like, a... It's, like...
Okay, I'm gonna stick by what I said. We didn't make a big deal out of that.
No, I guess not.
And, I mean, like, we made it clear through visual storytelling, looking at the record, like, who did the song and everything, but she's listening to it, and then we cut to the crow, and we're moving on, and we're doing other story
Yeah, I
things.
guess you're right. It's not like Scott Pilgrim.
When I say we cut to the crow, I mean we cut to the crow, not the crow. Everybody with me? Yeah, okay.
We cut to a crow, not the crow.
Okay, so I gotta ask you the question. We alluded to this earlier. How much was Ledger looking at this movie?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's very easy to say that he looked at it a lot, or they just got to a very similar place.
Yeah. It's hard to say.
It's not impossible he never watched this movie, or it's in the back of his head, but like, it's not like he went back to it.
It could have even been subconscious. It could have been a thing he watched as a kid, didn't even think of.
Yeah. There's similar performances.
There's one scene in particular, and I think we're past it already. I think it's when he goes to the guy in the auto shop or whatever, or the pawn shop.
Yeah.
Where he's doing some mannerisms that are just a lot like what Ledger did.
I agree.
And it blew my mind the first time I really sat down and watched this, because it was not too long after that movie, and I was like, oh, look like I'm looking at Ledger again.
But how much of that is the makeup? Like, you take that makeup off both of them, do their performances actually look that similar? I don't know.
It's hard to say because I don't have it in every scene. Mm-hmm. It's not just because he's made up that way. Like, you're right. The makeup around the lips. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Do you know about the wrestler Sting?
What about him?
That his gimmick is apparently playing painted up dead actors' characters. Because for all of the 90s, he plays... he wears makeup like the Crow.
Like the Crow, yeah.
And then, after Dark Knight, he wears makeup like the Joker.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Well, that seems like it's in poor taste.
Twice, yes. Like, that first time, like, okay, The Crow was a cool movie, we all saw it.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
But, like, when you do it again...
But it does tell us one thing about Sting. He, too, was thinking, yeah, I think Heath Ledger was looking at Brandon Lee in The Crow. I don't know why that line has always been really funny to me. But it is. They can't... I don't even know if you guys are synced up with this, because we've had some audio issues tonight, but that's the Cream line. The Cream line is really funny. I think, especially with the cinematography, this movie just takes a lot of risks. There's a lot of, like, generally counterintuitive things that we're doing with the camera.
There is a better world.
Why this is working.
There's a better world where Batman Returns, like, tanks Tim Burton's career, and Alex Proyas becomes the definitive, like, 90s angsty teenager voice.
It's also really
or
easy
not
to
even
say...
angsty teenager, because obviously Dark City is not angsty teenager.
It's not.
It's just more... He becomes the definitive, like, gothic director.
No, and I feel like I feel like Dark City in some ways, I mean, it's distinctively Proyas, but it looks like a movie that in some ways that what's his face who directed RoboCop could have done.
Oh, Verhoeven.
Like that it almost feels like a convergence of those two guys.
Mm-hmm.
They also had similar careers in that they sort of fell off and.
Well, Verhoeven, as I understand it, goes home, and he keeps making movies in his homeland.
That's unfortunate. I bet they're great.
Yeah, probably. That's after he does the 1-2 punch of Showgirls and then Starship Troopers.
Right, and by 1-2 punch you mean punching himself in the face. For his career.
Both of them.
And we know that Eric loves Starship Troopers, but
most people love Starship Troopers. Like
I liked it. I didn't love it.
Have been, but you didn't grow up with it.
Okay, so then it's just a nostalgia thing. But I'm just saying it's not a great movie. It is misunderstood, certainly, but it's got big swaths of I don't care.
But you're not an action guy, like the points where you completely tune out when you tune out of that movie. Like a lot of people are still invested.
Oh, all right.
I agree with you that the action stuff goes too long, but
especially at the end, man. That third act, cut it in half.
But like the critical appraisal of that movie has completely inverted.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if people don't hold up as like a great film, but like everyone kind of agrees that we don't know what happened when Starship Troopers came out because it's clearly not a fascist movie.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite of a Phantom Menace.
It would be like if RoboCop came out and
everybody's like, that's great. And then 20 years, they're like, wait, what? Wait, Phantom Menace is not that good of a movie.
It would be like if when RoboCop came out, everyone like accused it of being a film that like celebrated consumerism and like the 80s wealth excess.
That's true, except like I don't know. That movie is clearly actually a satire, but it's almost more subtle about it than RoboCop was. Well, is it though?
Maybe I don't think it is.
Maybe it's not.
And then Showgirls has also been critically reappraised, but more as a ironic thing. Like a lot of people like Showgirls now, but because it's so bad, it's good.
So this doesn't have enough to do with the movie we're watching, but I'm going to ask you this question anyway. Okay. Did people love RoboCop when it came out because it was a satire, or because the violence in it they found enjoyable and it was just funny, or it was just fun to watch? Like
I can tell you,
I really think that the difference between for a lot of people, because I think a lot of people it took a while to even realize that was a satire, even though RoboCop was liked, and I think a lot of the critics got it was a satire, but I think a lot of viewers just thought it was fun. I
can tell you that Roger Ebert's review does not seem to understand that's a satire.
Like he does in the video review, he calls it that.
Interesting, because in the
I'm almost positive, but maybe that was a thing that Siskel said, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure that word comes up in their review." I forget.
The thing that I remember from his review is saying,
"Oh, also Daredevil ripped this part off."
A lot of movies rip this part off.
Yeah.
If no one knows, this is the first hero has a symbol that he lights in flames. Everything after this is intentionally doing the Crow.
Oh, also Dark Knight does that too.
Yeah.
We should throw that out there.
And it's a bat, which is even closer looking.
That's true, because it's got
not as obvious
wings.
in Daredevil.
No, until you go back and look at this, and you go, "Oh wait, they kind of ripped that off."
Well, yeah, but I feel like the 2Ds is not as obvious as like a bat symbol.
But, it is because it slowly burns around. That's what makes it feel like a rip-off.
That's true. But where's I going with all that? No,
sorry.
In the review, Ebert says that the thing that differentiates RoboCop from all of the other shoot-'em-up action movies is that it has heart.
Which is not an untrue statement.
No, but it's putting it in the same park as the rest of them, which it isn't.
Yeah, because it's also a comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if everyone got that was a comedy either.
Yeah, I don't think they did.
RoboCop more successfully, I think, plays to both audiences. Like, RoboCop is watchable if you don't get that it's a comedy, as just a super violent action movie.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
Mm-hmm. The problem with Starship Troopers is that it's of two halves. If you don't get the comedy, that first half is unwatchable. It's just military, like, train, like... And then the second half is what you came for, which is where we're just murdering aliens. Like, it doesn't play to both audiences. And it's not integrated like RoboCop is integrated, I guess is what I mean.
Okay, yeah. Eric, using your brilliant cultural expertise, explain to me why The Crow is a cult classic and was not a phenomenon when it was released.
I don't know. Like, it's like everything else, right? Like,
but like, why did RoboCop take off and this didn't?
I think RoboCop was pushed harder. I think RoboCop was treated as a more major release.
That's
I don't
true.
think this was treated as a major release.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's made more like a B movie. Although it's not like RoboCop doesn't have some of that.
Yeah, it's made kind of like Ninja Turtles. That's right. He kills all of them the way that they, with like whatever their vice is, which is very Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
Which isn't their, or I guess Freddy Krueger is more that. You're a deaf person. I'm gonna kill you with sound. Like that's what you do knives. I'll kill you with knives. You do arson. I kill you with fire.
Well, and I like that as
you do drugs. I make you overdose.
And that it's also very Dante. Like I like it as the like a celestial avatar, where you're basically you're basically like hell coming to someone's home, right? Where like you're in the circle that does whatever terrible thing you did back to you. You know? So there's something like old school epic about that. Good one.
The rest of my suspension, wouldn't that just be the first day of my suspension?
And see, I don't want to call that a bad line of the script. I think that guy is intentionally written to be dumb.
I do want to mention at some point in this commentary, I haven't found a great place to talk about this. I think James O'Barr is kind of a hack. And if you ever watch his...
you've always said that.
If you ever watch his interview on the DVD... it's kind of obnoxious. So, he made The Crow. He took a real-life experience and fueled that into his art, and, like, it is all of his pain and suffering and all of that. Yes, that's great. Like, that's art.
Yeah.
He has never done anything else since. And what's really obnoxious in the...
And you're arguing he's not really a storyteller.
Well, yeah, and he wasn't there either.
Yeah.
And, like, that's fine. Like, that's... Like he made visual poetry. Fine.
Yeah.
But the thing is, in the interviews on the DVD and things, he talks very dismissively and talks down about basically just any other like mainstream comics. Where he's like, yeah, you know, I try to crap out like a Wolverine story, a Batman story, I just can't do it. And I'm like, yeah, but you crapped out like a bunch more Crow stories that were not directly influenced by like your personal tragedy and trauma. Like, you just kept retreading the same. Like, how is that? How is Crow the 15th Crow miniseries less like just non-artistic than a Batman or Wolverine comic?
Yeah, you're just putting that out because that's what you're known for.
Yeah, and he's never done anything else since.
Yeah, and if you had a bunch of other stories to tell, or you had other like ideas or feelings or whatever to like filter into an artistic piece that isn't exactly about being a narrative, then okay. But like it doesn't sound like he necessarily did that.
I don't think he's a good enough writer to like have actually gone and done like a more straightforward. Like,
you don't think he would have gotten a run on something?
No,
or he wouldn't. It would have been very good.
But he could have done like a really cool Batman mini, like especially as an artist. Like I think he could have had a career as an artist because
I like his art.
Is stunning.
Yeah.
But
it makes you feel a way that nobody else had ever done previously, really. And this movie not only tells a decent story, but it also captures that visually like perfectly.
If I was him, you know what I would have done? I would have gone to...
I would have made music videos.
I would have had like an open door policy with The Crow for people who have experienced trauma to come and make a Crow miniseries and do what I did.
Him a script and then he draws it.
Yeah, like
he should have collaborated more.
Yeah. Well, I think he does. But I think he stops drawing. Like I think he does the thing that all comic book artists do because every comic book writer wanted to be an artist when they were young enough and couldn't draw, and every comic book artist just doesn't actually seem to want to draw. And the second they can write, they just stop drawing. I don't know what that is, but it's a thing.
Yeah, because ever since I saw this and wrote about it with McFarlane, I just see it everywhere.
Yeah, everyone does it. Everyone stops drawing. They don't want to draw.
This movie has great rain.
Well, yeah. It rains all of the time.
So you better get it right, because, I mean, it's like Ferenginar. It just never stops.
This is the bit that CJ went into when I did Fire It Up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is what CJ went
Just
into.
that crazy speech.
Yeah, it's this. This is where he did the lead up and then that Fire It Up.
Oh, the lead up to Fire. Okay.
Yeah. He committed that limp, and I always appreciate that in an actor because we never do that.
So yeah, the obvious thing to do with another Crow movie to me would be don't reboot, just make up a different character. And that's what you should do with both The Crow and The Mask. You just keep passing it off to a different character and tell a totally different story about another guy.
Well, that is what we do in the sequels.
Sure. But that's what they should keep doing. Don't do Eric. Why would you do Draven again? I don't want...
Because I would say public perception is that all the Crow sequels suck, and so if you just do like another Crow, the immediate public perception is, okay, so you're doing another Crow movie. Where if you're rebooting it, you're going back to the one people liked, and so you're...
Can I rebut that?
Yeah.
I think this many years out now anyway, I think the public perception of The Crow is, wait, there were Crow sequels?
You're probably right.
So I think you can get away with doing that.
Or people know they exist, but they never watch them and assume they're bad because they heard they were bad.
I'm not saying that you can't necessarily reboot this with the same character and make it good. It just seems like...
Well, they did. There's a TV show.
The most yeah.
And that is to Eric Draven. Like,
no,
that's not just a Crow.
No, I knew that. But it seems to me like... I thought one of the sequels also used him. Are they all different people?
The connective tissue of the second film is she has grown up.
Oh.
And it's like a cyberpunk future. Like, it's kind of low-tech cyberpunk.
It's futuristic? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
None of them bring him back.
I am curious to finally read that. I mean, watch that.
The third one's interesting because they kind of play it like a mystery, and then the fourth one is the fourth one.
Yeah, I forgot there was this much actual rock music in this movie. I feel dumb about what I said earlier. I just haven't seen this in a while. It's just weird that that's not what stuck with me. Because I think of this as a music movie, but then what I remember is the visual style. You gotta have that, right? Mm-hmm. You gotta blow up your guitar.
Well, so...
Is it... Let me say this real quick, just because we're past it already, and this is what I'm kind of surprised by. Oh god, I have so many thoughts right now. So first of all, is it nuts to you that we did that amazing shot with the lighting and the color palette the way it was for like 5 seconds and cut away from it? Secondly, once again, Birds of Prey is really ripping off this movie.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the TV show in case you happen to watch this in the future where there's a Birds of Prey movie. Not only does it do those like flying through the city shots, but the camera's like moving around back and forth like it does in that show. I didn't realize just how much of that it rips off. And, oh, you know why they do that? Because it's Birds of Prey, and they have a bird that flies through the city that they follow?
Yes.
Oh, I wish we had made this observation when we did the commentary on that pilot, because I don't think we did.
So the guitar smash thing is interesting, actually, kind of narratively.
Mm-hmm.
So he breaks it because he's done. Funboy's the last one. So he's not coming back. He's not going to play more guitar. He's going out to kill Funboy because he doesn't know that Top Dollar is running everything. And
so he thinks his work is done.
Yes, and there were deleted scenes. There's an idea that's abandoned in this movie that's then basically used as the crux of the second movie, and then is edited out of the second movie to make it closer to this movie.
That's nuts.
There's this idea that
the head thing is weird. What is she wearing? It's like the under part of a motorcycle helmet. Sorry.
It's just like a, what do you call it? Like a bonnet.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, maybe. Sorry, good.
So you can look on DVD. There's deleted scenes that are kind of amusing because they're not the audio's not fixed is not the right word. The audio's not right.
Okay.
There's a character in the comic that's a skull cowboy. That does not appear in this film, but is in the deleted scenes. But it's funny because it's just a guy in like a skull mask, and so like the audio is not like what it would have been. So it's just a guy talking to a mask.
Oh, you're saying they never did the ADR?
Yeah. They never did the ADR. There's a skull cowboy that shows up. That basically there's this rule that you can't stick around after you've killed the people that you. He's so good in this movie.
So that whole chaos anarchy thing, like, I'm not sure Nolan wasn't also looking at this movie.
You might be right. But so there's this whole idea that once you're the Crow, you kill the Crow gives you the powers to kill the people that wronged you. And that's it. Then you go back to being dead.
Mm-hmm.
And after he kills Fun Boy, he has no reason to stick around, but he wants to take down Top Dollar. And he starts losing his powers.
Oh. Does that happen in the comic?
I can't remember.
Okay.
But Skull Cowboy is in the comic, but
Yeah.
I can't remember like what purpose.
Sure.
But they use him, and there's a whole thing where he's supposed to be losing his powers because he's staying too long, and then he gets his powers back because the forces of...
This guy's amazing. What are all the papers on the table for? This guy's amazing.
Yeah, no, I love Michael Wincott. I wish he was in more things. It is his best performance. So there's this whole idea that, because apparently the cosmic forces of justice also work on his revelations. So if he doesn't know that guy's actually responsible for killing...
Neither does the cosmos?
Yes, so he loses his powers, and then when he finds out that Top Dollar is responsible, he kind of gets his powers back at the end of the movie, and all of that's kind of edited out of this movie. And then they use that for the second movie, where he actually wants to stay because he starts falling in love, and he's kind of trying to give up revenge, he starts losing his powers, and there's supposed to be a bad ending to that movie?
Oh.
Where basically, if you don't do what you're supposed to as the Crow, you just have to wander the earth, immortal forever. Which doesn't seem like a terrible curse, but, that's a thing. That's what you're supposed to,
I feel like you'd have to actually live it before you could decide if it was terrible or not.
Yeah.
Because we often play it that way, where it's like, well, hell is walking amongst the earth and people you cared about and not being able to participate.
Well, and the second one, or in the second one, it's his kid that dies, and so he doesn't get to see his kid again. So that's part of the punishment too. Is and now you don't get to see the loved one that you were supposed to be avenging. And that's how that movie's supposed to end. Is that he gets punished, and they kind of re-edit it so it doesn't happen. So it's interesting. There was a subplot that's removed from this movie that's then used as the basis of the second movie, but
then taken out of
that movie as well.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Something you just said reminded me of a point I wanted to make earlier, which is, and this is going to be an obvious thing for me to say, but this is also the blueprint you should look at for a Spawn adaptation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Of course. Both stylistically, but also somewhat narratively. Your first Spawn story really should just be he goes after the person that murdered him, and then you move on, as opposed to waiting 80 issues before he even figures out who did it, and then retconning later who did it.
You actually... Well, and you could also... you can make a Spawn movie just rip this off, where he's going after whoever killed him, and then you find out that Jason Wynn was the one behind it. You can literally do this narrative.
Yeah, and this movie is little known enough, I don't think anybody would notice.
And
or even if they did, you're
saw this movie.
Okay, it's yeah. No, of course he did. Of course he did. But important, and honestly, the 1997 movie, as kind of watered down as that is, as far as the violence and stuff goes, it's also taking some cues from this visually.
Oh yeah.
But when he first made Spawn, he couldn't have been influenced by this because it came out first.
And I don't think he was looking at the comics, but he might have been.
Maybe.
It also has a non-traditional panel layout, like Dark Knight Returns. One thing I do...
But it would be disingenuous to act like James O'Barr did the first comic book where somebody comes back from the dead and wants revenge.
Yeah. One of the things I think is interesting about the Crow as a revenge action hero in relation to everyone else is... that
the universe is on his side?
No.
Because that's what's kind of interesting about it to me. It's hard to argue with anything he's doing. The universe brought him back and told him that he's not working for the hell. He's basically working for heaven, as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He's not a gun person.
No.
He uses guns because he picks up the bad guy's weapons, but he doesn't go to the gun store and get guns. The Crow will use guns because he took them off of his opponents. But he's not a gun guy, and that's actually kind of interesting and different in the revenge thriller thing. There are not many people that are avenging their dead ones that are not using guns.
That's a good point. You'd think
I was thinking about that earlier when we were having the mass shooter,
that's
like
a
talking
good
about
point.
the gun debate.
I mean, we're looking at a shootout right here, but it's not with the Crow.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the Crow did just use guns in that previous action.
It's also
ironic
ironic that the Crow's not a gun guy, and Brandon Lee tragically gets shot by a gun. Like, that's really sad.
Do you know any of the conspiracy stuff about his death?
Uh-uh.
There are conspiracy theories that that did not look great.
I was not looking. I was looking at you talking.
There are some conspiracy
I should have been paying attention to the
things
film.
about. So, the death of Bruce Lee is kind of mysterious, kind of. Like Bruce Lee, like you can put like a kind of died under mysterious circumstances question mark next to it.
Like not as much as George Reeves, but
no, but Bruce Lee like had like a headache and like went to a friend's house, was like complaining about like his head hurting. They gave him some medication. He went and laid down, never woke up.
Oh, that sounds like a Michael Jackson kind of situation.
Yeah, so
not the same thing, but
there is something where like Bruce Lee's going to come out, or apparently maybe it's been a while since I looked into this, but apparently maybe Bruce Lee was going to come out about something I want to say with the Chinese government or something like that.
Oh, weird.
And so there's like this thing that like they made him go away, and then there's so like on top of that there is a theory that this is all conspiracy theory stuff. I don't.
You don't bite it.
There's a lot of evidence. I also haven't looked enough into it, but apparently Brandon Lee said that he knew stuff about his dad's death that he was going to come out about, and then he mysteriously dies on the set of this movie with a. If people don't know, Brandon Lee died making this movie, and they used the shot in the movie.
I've always heard that, but I wasn't sure if it was true.
I want to say they confirmed it on the commentary, but I'm not positive.
Okay,
it's been a long time
since I never listened to that
commentary.
commentary.
It's worth listening to. I think in the commentary they talk about there was a debate.
Is Poyas on it?
I think so.
Okay.
You got this right there.
That's true.
I'm pretty sure it's Poyas and the writer. But I believe the commentary also talks about that they debated whether they should release the movie or not.
No, it's screenwriter John Shirley and producer Jeff Most.
Okay. There was a debate about whether or not they should release the movie because basically the question came down to if you're releasing it, is it a tribute to the man that this was his last work?
Or is it exploitative?
Yes. And is it making money off of the death of someone?
Yeah.
And like that was the question. But so there's a whole
there's a debate to be had there, certainly.
Yes. But so his death in this movie shouldn't have happened because if people don't know, the way he died is when you shoot guns in a movie, you shoot blanks, which means it fires with like the muzzle flare and everything. There's gunpowder, but there's no actual bullet. We use them in every movie where there's guns.
Mm-hmm. So you have the flashbang.
Yeah, all the time. And the way that what happened in this movie is that there was a cartridge that was like lodged in the like.
I used to know all this. You're remembering it better than I do. I'm glad.
Where the bullet pops out of the chamber,
I'm glad you remember.
It was stuck there. So when the next one came up, it fired it forward.
That's what it was. Right?
And like it's one of those things where like accidents happen all the time. Like I'm sure that's what actually happened. But there is a contingent of people that believe that he was murdered to keep from revealing things about his father.
Especially because that doesn't happen very often.
Yes, but also conversely. In the Blade Trinity commentary, which I have listened to, there's a point where they jump through a window, and like that is the most basic thing you can do in a movie is the like breakaway glass, and you just jump through it. Like it's in every movie, like ever.
It's even in a lot of TV shows.
Yeah, it's
all the time.
It's the easiest stunt to do practically. And like
somebody died.
They didn't die, but first day of shooting, they jumped through the glass and like it got them like real cut up.
Wow.
So like accidents like that do happen all the time on movie sets. But it is also possible that he had evidence about how his father was actually secretly murdered by the Chinese government.
It probably wasn't that, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's on the table.
That's not the craziest conspiracy theory you've ever heard. But yeah.
One of the things I've always meant to do but not done is go look at Brandon Lee's other films. Because he's so good in this.
Yeah. And of course, it was talked about like it would have been a career-making movie. I
think it would have been.
Because the difference between, and obviously the direct comparison with Heath Ledger too, because he also died right after making that movie, but not during it. Heath Ledger was already a movie star. And, I mean, like, he could have gotten bigger, but I mean, like, Brokeback Mountain happened.
It would have been the thing that catapulted him to the complete mainstream.
Yeah, where he would have arguably gotten to, like, Johnny Depp level or something.
Yeah, yeah.
And that probably would have happened.
Or Christian Bale level, because remember, after Dark Knight, he's in everything.
So the question, yeah, good point. So the question is, what would Brandon Lee's career have been like?
I think it would have been more movies like that. I think Brandon Lee's career would have been action movies. Like, I don't think Brandon Lee, because that's what he's doing beforehand, and, like, his dad's Bruce Lee, like, he is an action person. Like, yeah. He's a martial arts guy, but he probably would have gotten bigger projects. Like,
but he could have been Keanu Reeves.
I was about to say.
Were you really?
I think on the table he could have been Neo.
He could have gotten Neo.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was having all the same thoughts you were as you were saying. Yeah, he could have gotten even Neo.
Now, the counter argument for Neo is you cast someone who's not martial arts, so you're surprised when he does it. And I think that's the idea for the casting. But
well, that's true because Will Smith almost got it, and that would have been the same thing with him. He's not. He's not a. Martial artist.
But no, I think he could have been in a bunch of big movies. I really do. I've never gone to see his other movies because I always got the impression that they weren't great and that he's not great in them, and that it's like he did what he could. But I've never watched them, and I should. And I'd forgotten that. And we're watching it now, I'm like, oh yeah, I was meant to go back and look at those. I should do that and see if they're worth watching.
I mean, he's given really good material here, and he's got a great director.
Yes. And oftentimes, even great actors, when you go back to a lot of their earlier work, it's not great. Because they're not given great material, and they're not being directed well, and they're still finding themselves.
I was going to say, I think oftentimes we forget that an actor doesn't necessarily start as a great actor.
Yeah.
You have to build up to that.
Yeah.
I've always said, when you go back and look at, this is always my big example, but you go back and look at Tom Welling in the scenes where he's with Rosenbaum and the scenes where he's not with Rosenbaum, and it's night and day. Mm-hmm. You got the right director, you got good co-actors to play off of.
Okay, so just for the sake of the narrative here, outside is where he meets the Skull Cowboy, and his powers are taken away, which is why when he shoots him here, he will actually be hurt.
So it actually doesn't make a lot of sense with the movie we have, huh?
No. So what we do...
I never thought of that.
...is you see the crow over there? What we do is we add in this thing where they grab the crow and, they can, mystically take his powers away because they have the crow. That's what we're doing there.
Oh.
I think, if I remember correctly. I think we had a different reason for why his powers are going away.
So that's not the gunshot that actually hit him, right?
No. It's the one in the apartment.
Okay.
Which is interesting because they shot most of the movie before they shot that scene.
Which was lucky to put the movie together.
Well, yes, but also...
because he could have died halfway through making the movie and they wouldn't have had enough footage to put it together, and you would have ended up, and I'm not trying to be crass when I say this, but no disrespect to the man, obviously, rest in peace, but you would have had like a Poltergeist 3 situation. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know about that.
I do. I think there's a little bit in this where it is someone else, but most of the movie is shot with him.
Well, it's easy to do that with this character as long as you don't have a lot of dialogue that you gotta do, and she's not delivering a lot of dialogue.
From far away.
Yeah, or from the back.
Yeah, see there, she grabbed the crow. I forget. I want to say there's a thing, because I know that's how we play it in the movie as it is that she has the crow, and so that's why his powers are going away. But there was cut material that there's a whole subplot. It's a whole thing. But it's been lots of time into
it. So it makes more sense, or it's kind of a better idea, but they tried to...
I don't know.
...finagle it together so that you're not confused.
I think it plays fine. I don't think you realize that, the Skull Cowboy stuff isn't there. But I do think that we come up with an alternate explanation with the movie we have.
It doesn't feel like there's a giant scene missing. Yes, it's not Power Rangers 2017.
Yes,
it's not.
Yes.
How did we get from there to here?
We shot a scene that explains how we got from there to here.
Yeah.
But yes, so...
I also think Brandon Lee could have maybe been a TV guy.
Yeah.
I could have seen him getting a TV show. And
But so, at this point, he's killed all the people that killed his fiancée. So he has no reason to stick around, but he's still trying to kill Top Dollar because he's a bad guy. And so Top Dollar is then going to reveal to him that he was in fact the one that told them to do the thing, and then he'll get his powers back.
So why is the
because the universe doesn't know that Top Dog was the one that ordered that. They work through his eyes.
But if the universe doesn't know that, the powers that be, as it were, if the universe...
Angel also is looking at this movie.
It really is. If the universe... See, everything is The Crow, it turns out, even though not a lot of people
all
saw
movies are Spider-Man, but in fact, all movies are The Crow.
I mean, I say it wasn't super popular. It got sequels and stuff. It made money. It just wasn't like a giant phenomenon. It wasn't The Mask.
It's bigger after.
Yeah.
It's the consummate cult. I think
it's probably one of those movies that made a bunch of money on video.
I think The Crow is closer to something like Princess Bride, where like I think by now everyone knows The Crow. Maybe not young people. Like maybe didn't keep going as that far, but I think everyone of that generation knows what The Crow is at the very least, even if they didn't watch it.
I think it does have the reputation of being one of the better early comic book movies.
Mm-hmm. And just as an action movie, I think there's people that don't even know it's based on a comic book. They just know it as. This is cool. I like this. But see how he's not actually interacting with her and they're cutting back and forth? I think this stuff is added.
Okay. No, it feels like reshoots and stuff, doesn't it? I mean, like 89, it ends in a bell tower. I was gonna... So the thing I was gonna say is, if the universe doesn't know that that guy is actually responsible for all this, and so he has one more person that he should murder, then how come it even lets him stick around?
Well, because...
Shouldn't he just disappear, or does he have to go back to the graves?
No, because he'll be punished by not having powers of being immortal, and he'll just wander the earth by himself forever and never get to...
But you only know that because of stuff that's not in the movie.
Yes.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. In this, she just grabs the crow and it takes away his powers. She does because she's kind of mystical-y. So
I guess what I'm saying is,
do that.
In just the context of the material I have, if I didn't know what you said, and it's not in the movie, then I would not understand how come the universe allows him to keep walking around. Because I wouldn't know that you can choose to do that, but there's consequences for it. And that you would just wander around, like you said earlier, and not have powers, right?
Yes. You would assume the universe is just letting him finish up. Well, this guy's bad too, so take care of him.
Yeah, but in that short window, in that intermediary, you'd think the universe would be like, you're done.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't. He just lets him keep going.
Okay.
But I don't think you actually notice it in the narrative of the film. I don't think you're thinking about that unless I bring up to you. Did you notice that that everyone that he thinks killed his fiancée is dead, so why is he still doing this? I don't think you're thinking about that while you're watching the movie. I probably only think about it because I know the missing scenes.
But if I watched it a few times, I might be like, wait a minute, he thinks his job is done, so how come he's still there? I think I might have that thought. And I may have before, I just don't remember. But you're right, I'm thinking about it harder because you told me about that. You know, he's arguably having as hard of a time in his afterlife as he was.
In his before life?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's his during life.
His during life.
His before life would have been not existing. Right.
See, here it is. This is where he reveals it. And then you'll notice that he gets all of his powers back. And we kind of explain this with the crow thing, but if you know about that deleted scene, it makes sense. He reveals that he planned all of this, and so that's why he gets his powers back, and yeah.
I think during life we just call life.
But also, I think if you're watching this movie, I don't know if you actually know that they're playing this as a reveal, because Top Dollar's been there so long. You probably just think that he murdered, that he was involved because we're focusing on him. But this is.
See, now I just have your interpretation of a thing that I don't remember if I had an interpretation of. So, like, when he smashes the guitar, I didn't know thematically what that was doing.
Yeah, it's supposed to be this is the last one. But yeah, and there's the setup payoff thing with the memories and he just. I mean,
that's the balance you walk.
Oh man, did you see that shot? So he's bleeding into the gargoyle, and the blood is coming out of the gargoyle's mouth.
Oh, I forgot about that.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
It's always new things to discover in The Crow.
That feels like one of those things that you'd put in a music video. Like a real edgy, moody music video.
Or like an album cover.
Yeah, that would make a pretty kick-ass album cover.
Or a Spawn cover. Spawn on a gargoyle that's like vomiting blood.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if I've ever had this thought before, but I think that's my dream project. I think Alex Proyas making Spawn is
yeah. That would be great.
Is like, oh my god.
Now. But I don't know if Alex Proyas now is still the Alex Proyas before, and he's just like doing like crap work.
Yeah.
Or because like he also made Gods of Egypt. Like that was his last movie.
Oh, I forgot that was him. That's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
But
he
that's
does
him
something
making
else
a
in between
big,
that's also
crappy
nothing.
studio film.
Mm-hmm.
And his good movies aren't big, crappy studio films.
Mm-hmm.
But what you said just speaks to a thing I was talking about earlier, which is not only can you not, and this applies not just to actors, but obviously anybody artistic, you can't just assume that a person comes out of the womb a great actor, and that even if you're watching a movie where they're not great, they can't improve and get a lot better or become great.
Yeah,
but you also can't assume that they'll stay great either.
Which is interesting, because I think we don't think of actors in the way that we think of writers and artists. We're like, we all understand that, like, when you go look at someone's early work, it's not going to be as good as their later stuff. And also,
sometimes
there's going to be a peak where their later stuff kind of goes down.
Oh, he got married and had kids, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah. But we never think of actors like that, do we?
And we should.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're also people who go through different life stuff, and maybe you can't tap into the same stuff all the time.
And it's also
that you should be able to tap into
that like,
gets you to the emotional place you need to make a character compelling.
It's also possible that like Brandon Lee coming up, not having watched his other films, but it's also possible that Brandon Lee coming up in that late 80s, early 90s era is making movies where he's as good, if not better, than like Van Damme as an actor, and so that's fine.
Yeah.
But you get a director that works for you and it clicks, you're like, this is how I do this. And then you can be better after that. But it's also possible that director just knows how to get exactly what they need from you, and you would never be this good again.
Yeah, there's so many variables, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's passion for a project, there's adrenaline when it's working, there's
we've often had discussions about the Whedon curse, where like most people that work in Whedon projects are amazing and give some of the best performances you've ever seen, and then they can never do that again on any other project.
Yeah. And very few people that work with Whedon do you not hear that they have kind of like they're part of his family thing now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like he connects with people, he clicks with people.
Which is interesting because he obviously doesn't direct every episode of that show, of any of those shows, but...
Well, that's true. I guess I'm thinking more of his
but
movies and the episodes
I don't
that he
think of Sarah
direct,
Michelle Gellar as a good actress, except for in Buffy.
And there's even episodes where she's not good there.
Yes. But there's episodes where she's amazing.
Yeah.
I know you don't love The Body as much as I do, but like she's amazing. I've never seen her do anything like that in anything else. In other films where she's trying to be dramatic.
That's an amazing episode. I just have a hard time feeling the same way the characters do because I don't care about her mom.
Yeah. Everyone's performances. You'll also never see Xander do a performance like that again.
No. No, and I don't imagine...
I don't know who Eliza is.
I don't either. She's not the actress that plays his wife, is she?
No. Well, I mean, she might be, but she didn't die in that scene.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Based on the comic book series and comic strip by James O'Barr.
Weird.
I've never seen that credit before. Maybe he did something in between that they used some of. I've never heard that before. I don't know.
Oh, that was... Okay, Eliza Hutton is who's mentioned there, and she was a casting director, but she was his fiancée, which is why her name is there.
Oh, okay.
So he dies and they don't get married.
Okay.
And so it credits it to both of them because it's also mourning the fact that she didn't get married. That's great.
Okay, yeah.
I've never seen that.
And I think
that's really cool.
And I think they have I think she's the one they have a conversation with about if they should release the movie or not.
Oh, okay, sure. That's really respectful.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, I've never seen a dedication like that with somebody's name in it that's living, but like that's the survivor. That's how
it's for both of them.
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
It also probably because she's connected to the project itself.
Boy, that just hurts my feelings. It's really hard not to watch this movie and get a little depressed, right? Like, and it's just impossible.
Well,
like
Toyota's buried in these credits.
Yeah, this is
and Sean Polito. That's the guy that looks like. What's his name? That I said earlier. Danny DeVito. John Polito looks like Danny DeVito.
It's a fun movie to put on when I'm in the mood for it, especially around Halloween. And it's not like I won't just put it on because the guy that was the lead in it died, but like it's hard not to have your feelings hurt a little bit whenever you watch it. Mm-hmm. So it's that kind of bittersweet thing.
I think it's interesting for, like, it's not a thing I think about when I rewatch The Dark Knight. But I think that's because, like, I knew that when it came out, and, like, I had that experience, and, like, now it's just a movie. Whereas this movie, that's part of the legacy of this movie for me, because I come to it already knowing that.
It's also different because he died making it. This movie killed him.
That's true. That's true.
Dark Knight didn't kill Heath Ledger.
No.
I mean, there's conspiracy theories with that, too, that it kind of did. That the overdose wouldn't have happened if he hadn't tapped into the mind of the Joker like that. I don't know if there's any truth to that at all.
Well, even less dramatically, I heard that, like, what he overdosed on was, like, medication he was taking because the shoots were so difficult because he had to be so energetic and hyper late at night because so much of the movie takes place at night that, like, that takes a toll on your body. Like, he was trying to readjust to, like, normal...
Sure.
And so, like, that's the medication he was taking, the overdose. I think I've heard that, but I don't
tragically,
I don't know.
That movie might have had more than a little bit to do with the fact that he died. It's a little different than you got shot on camera. Like,
yeah. And it's also different than also his father, who died after Enter the Dragon, while he's making that movie. He stops while he's making Enter the Dragon, but died in a similar way, more to Heath Ledger.
Because the guy who played Bane in Batman and Robin also had that. I mean, that movie basically killed him, but he died after it. He was on so many steroids. Yeah,
I thought he was already on those steroids.
I think he took more to get beefed up for that movie, is what I'd always read.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how true that is.
I also thought he died considerably after, but I wasn't. I don't know. I haven't looked into.
Well, that might be a bad example.
I'm not sure. I
have
all the facts on that
since I looked into this. Yeah.
But
so I'm listening to the song in the credits right now, and I'm just having flashbacks to Lethal Weapon.
At least this one's not like The Crow, right? Like, it's not a The Crow song.
It's also not exactly at all. Exactly, it's not really at all in the style of music that
you've never
this
seen
movie
First
was,
Blood, right?
Huh.
Okay. There's one in First Blood.
Is it hilarious?
There's one First Blood that is to the theme of that movie. Like, Rambo has a theme, and then they take that theme and put lyrics to it.
That's silly.
Yeah, and it's also Stallone's brother that sings it, I think. It's been a while. But it's hilarious. I highly recommend the First Blood song.
Can you imagine if we did that with RoboCop? Like, it's RoboCop, yes, it's RoboCop.
I mean, that's kind of what there's a RoboCop cartoon.
It's RoboCop, cop.
There's a RoboCop cartoon that I watched when I was younger. There's actually two RoboCop cartoons, and I watched both of them. But one of them I
thought it had more than one.
There's RoboCop,
cartoon
which I had a VHS tape of that, so I've only seen one episode, which is an amazing. That show has an amazing take on the Middle East conflicts. Because that's the episode I watched, but that's what it's about. Is like there's like a meeting between two Middle Eastern like dignitaries, and the resolution is, I just want to send trucks through your country to take them to other countries. Like, oh, wow. That's all you want to do? I can allow that. And then they shake hands. But it's another RoboCop.
I wonder if Captain Planet ever handled that.
But then there's another RoboCop series, I think it's called like Alpha Squad, Alpha something. And if I remember correctly, the theme song to that is basically the RoboCop theme, but it's like, RoboCop, RoboCop. Like, it's just the, yeah. I think
Wait,
that's what
this song was in this movie? I didn't know that.
Which song?
This song.
Oh.
I don't remember what the song is called, but I know the song.
There's Burn, which is the song I think of when I think of this movie.
For 1990.
So they're for pilots.
Yeah, I think that's the song.
I didn't realize that they were this old, I guess.
I'm not sure who did the song, but I know this song.
Nine Inch Nails, of course.
So,
that makes perfect sense. Rage Against the Machine.
I still feel really stupid for what I said earlier. I didn't realize there was this much music in this movie. Yeah, this song is in this movie.
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize this song was in this movie.
That's crazy. Anyway, for 1994, these are long credits.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's also just really slowly scrolling. Like, it's not that there's that many more names than normal. It's just scrolling really slow. And, like...
There's a song called Ghost Rider in this movie. Ghost Rider also should have taken cues from this and did not.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so what we're learning is a bunch of stuff ripped this
Pantera's in
off,
this?
and a lot of bad things that should have didn't.
Yep.
Usually in credits, yeah, I'm talking about this. We'll do like columns for the songs, but we didn't do that with this. We just put them all like on top of each other.
Focused movie in some ways, music inspired movies. Like I guess you're trying to highlight that more.
It's a good idea. It's just even a lot of those movies don't do that. You know, Guardians, it's like 2 or 3 columns. Like.
So I always have a question about this: the characters, entities, events depicting this, any similarity, living or dead. You know, all that entirely coincidental, right?
Yeah.
What about when it's not?
Then you shouldn't have that, probably.
Like, The Crow is inspired by James O'Barr's wife being murdered. Although I think that was a hit and run. But, like, it's still inspired by real events.
I think that's a legal lie. You know, you put that in there so you can't get sued by anybody.
Like, is that in, like, I'm blanking on anything based on real life.
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. Does it say it in that? Because Abraham Lincoln was a person that lived.
But you're exaggerating the events, you know, in which case you would maybe want that, where you're like, look, we're not saying Abraham Lincoln was a vampire, but like A Beautiful Mind. A Beautiful Mind is based on a true story. Does it say that there?
I don't think biopics ever say that.
I don't know. I've never looked.
I guess we should look, yeah. There might be a video in that. I don't know. We have to go look. It'd be a cool research project. Anyway, everybody, thanks as always for listening. Eric, it was really fun watching this with you.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of insights on this movie, so thanks a bunch for coming and watching this with me.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of anybody else that knew this as well as you probably did.
I kind of forgotten how much I watched this as a kid, because it's been a little while since I watched it.
I don't think of you as like a Crow fan, but I figured...
I do really like this movie, and I watched it a lot as a teenager.
When you said, like, obviously Teenage Eric watched this movie a lot, yeah, subconsciously that's also what I was thinking.
Yeah, no, but I'd also kind of forgotten that. I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen this movie a lot.
Yeah,
and I watched the special features.
But you didn't message me and you're like, why do you want me on this commentary? Like,
yeah, it makes, yeah.
Like, it's at least a thing we've both seen.
Yeah, well, and when you look at everything else, like, it just makes sense that I watched this movie much. When you look at the other things I liked when I was a teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you guys had a good time. We certainly did. Leave your comments. Let us know what you think of this movie and any experiences that you have with it. Be interesting to read those. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan.
I was Eric.
And we will see you again down the road for more commentary goodness. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.